W.B. Yeats was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1865. He was a dramatist and a poet. It is not possible to study Yeats's works without mentioning the history of Ireland, as the two are very closely interconnected. Ireland is another beautiful country with a turbulent history. Although it has been a part of England since the 12th century, it has its own distinct culture, its own language, literature, music, and sports. The Irish national movement, or the Irish struggle for independence, began in the 16th century, but it reached its worst point in the 20th century. Yeats was an ardent nationalist and a patriot, but he was also a very strong critic of the violent and bloody measures taken by the armed wing of the nationalist movement. His connection to the Irish freedom struggle became even more complicated when he fell in love with a woman, Maud Gonne, who was a member of the freedom struggle. But despite proposing to her many times over many years, she never accepted him, and in fact she married another member of the freedom movement. Nevertheless, Yeats remained almost obsessed with her for a long time, until he met and married another woman, Georgiana, with whom he had a daughter in 1919. This is the daughter for whom he wrote this poem. Yeats's daughter Anne Yeats was born in February 1919 in their house in Ireland, which was known as the Tower. This poem was written 2 days after she was born. As a new father, Yeats must have felt a great responsibility towards his daughter. And considering the times in which she was born, we understand why the poet is saying a prayer for her. In 1919, when this poem was written, the First World War had just ended a few months back, and the world had not yet recovered from the shock or the suffering of the war. And then in January 1919, the Irish government declared its independence from England, and everybody knew that this was something that England could not ignore nor accept. So the storm in the first line of the poem refers not only to an actual storm which was gathering outside in the distance, but also to the political turmoil that has been unleashed by the Irish Declaration of Independence and the unrest that the world was still experiencing after the war. And the line continues, and half hid under this cradle hood and coverlet my child sleeps on. Unaware of all the turmoil raging outside, the child sleeps on peacefully in its cradle, covered by a blanket. There is no obstacle but Gregor's wood and one bare hill, where the haystack and roof leveling wind, breed on the Atlantic, can be stayed. The poet is aware that the storm was coming from the Atlantic Sea, which was only a few miles from their house, and it was bringing a very strong wind. The poet calls it the kind of wind that destroys houses and haystacks. And the poet is also aware that there is no obstacle to block the wind or even to disperse the force of the wind. before it reaches his house. There is only one small hill and a small forest belonging to his neighbor, Lady Gregory. And for an hour I have walked and prayed because of the great gloom that is in my mind. So with all these thoughts going through his mind, it is filled with a great gloom, and therefore the poet has been walking and he has been praying for an hour in the room beside his sleeping daughter. I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour, and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower, and under the arches of the bridge, and scream in the elms above the flooded stream, imagining in excited reverie that the future years had come, dancing to a frenzied drum, out of the murderous innocence of the sea. The poet has been moving about restlessly and praying for his child, and at the same time he has been listening to the wind screaming outside the tower, and all the places between their house and the sea, like under the bridge or in the forest next to the swollen stream. And his imagination is in an excited reverie. Reverie is a dreamlike state, meaning that the poet is getting lost in his thoughts. But the thoughts are getting his emotions excited. Not happy excited, but an agitated, nervous and troubled excited. He imagines that the terrible noise outside represents the future, and the future has come, dancing like a dancer, moving to a crazy drum, and it has come out of the murderous innocence of the sea. The crazy wind has come from the sea, which is murderous and innocent at the same time. The sea is murderous because it destroys and takes human lives, but it is innocent because it is taking these lives not out of malice or evil intentions, but it is just nature taking its own course. The sea does not control itself. It merely reacts to other forces of nature, and therefore it is innocent of evil intentions, no matter how destructive its actions might prove to be. May she be granted beauty, and yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught, or hers before a looking glass. From this stanza onward, we find the poet calling for blessings and protection upon his daughter. And like every father with a daughter, he wishes beauty upon her, but not the kind of beauty that makes a stranger's eye distraught. Distraught means to feel pain or distress. He does not want her to be the kind of beauty that captures people's hearts and breaks them. He also does not want her to become obsessed with her looks. For such being made beautiful overmuch, consider beauty a sufficient end. Lose natural kindness and maybe the heart-revealing intimacy that chooses right, and never find a friend. Sometimes when a woman is very beautiful, she becomes obsessed with her looks and neglects everything else about herself. She does not bother to develop her character or personality or her talents and gifts, and thus she may become selfish, vain, and stupid. And therefore, such a woman may never be able to form meaningful relationships and friendship. Being used to flattery, she may prefer flattery to honest opinions or advice, and therefore she may end up with false friends and false lovers. And this is a situation that the poet does not wish upon his daughter. Helen, being chosen, found life flat and dull, and later had much trouble from a fool, while that great queen that rose out of the spray, being fatherless, could have her way, yet chose a bandy-legged smith for man. To carry forward the idea that beauty can be a source of danger, the poet takes the example of two women who were renowned beauties during their time. Helen of Troy was known as the most beautiful woman during her time, and she married a king, but she found her life as a beautiful queen flat and dull, boring, and in her restlessness she eloped with another man, thus bringing about trouble in the form of destruction to two kingdoms. The great queen in the third line refers to Aphrodite or Venus, the goddess of love. Legend says that she rose out of the spray. She was created from the ocean, and she was perfectly beautiful. Being fatherless, could have her way, yet chose a bandy-legged smith for men. She was not born of a mother or a father, and therefore had the freedom to choose anybody that she wanted. And because of her beauty, she could have chosen any man or god. But she ended up with a bandy-legged smith for men. She married Hephaestus, the god of blacksmiths and the god of metals, who, according to legend, was ugly and deformed. The marriage, of course, did not last, because the queen became restless very soon, and she had affairs with gods and men, and this, of course, brought about a lot of trouble. It's certain that fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. Therefore, the poet concludes that fine women, beautiful women, eat a crazy salad with their meat, seem to eat something with their food, which makes them crazy, which makes them unstable. In other words, the poet is saying that beautiful women are not to be trusted, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. Horn of plenty refers to a source of abundance and a source of blessing. Beauty can be a source of blessing. It can be a source of joy to the person who is beautiful and to the people who comes into contact with her. But when that beautiful person is unstable and untrustworthy, then her beauty becomes a source of suffering to the people who comes into contact with her, and finally to herself. And in this way, the horn of plenty is undone. Beauty becomes a source of suffering. In courtesy, I'd have her chiefly learned Hearts are not had as a gift, but hearts are earned by those that are not entirely beautiful. In place of extreme physical beauty, the poet wishes his daughter to develop courteousness, that is, politeness and good manners. Because in the poet's experience and opinion, hearts are not gifts which are given away, but hearts can be earned. Hearts can be captured by charming characters, even when a person may not be physically very attractive. Yet many that have played the fool for beauty's very self has charm made wise. Many men who have been fooled by beauty have been brought to their senses by women with charming personalities. And many a poor man that has roved, loved, and thought himself beloved, from a glad kindness cannot take his eyes. And many men who have wandered around, lost for the love of a beautiful woman, have finally had their eyes opened by the true love of a woman who is kind-hearted and graceful rather than beautiful. So the poet is trying to say that it is important for women to develop their character and their personality rather than concentrate on their looks. Because looks and appearances are deceptive, and a love based on appearances alone can be shallow and short-lived. It will not last long. Whereas love based on character can be true love.